at a young age in school. If you were to go to my GSS, Santa Maria, a lot of people would describe me as a quiet, introspective person. I hardly talked in class. Then I remember having a conversation with my uncle. He used to be a professor at University of Ghana, retired now, and whilst we were he just said these things. Kwabena, you've got to break the jinx and chart a new course. I remember those words so much. So,
first reaction to AI when you actually began to appreciate its potential?
I was fascinated by it, and then I realized it held a lot of potential. And I examined that within the context of the myriad of problems that a lot of people faced. Not as students, but professionals, people working within their places. My pastor asked me, what are you going to do? I did not have an idea in mind. Maybe I had a couple of ideas, but I didn't yet wrote anything out. I said I wanted to build my own company.
There was this one time my kid came home, after the term break, brought his papers, exams papers. I had a look at it, and then you should see the questions. Samson, where was his strength, and he got a bit upset. And so he had to just drive his car to the headmistress. I think every serious company at least should get one of these.
That's
right. If you guys have periodic Monday morning meetings and there is that secretary or PR who is supposed to be compiling reports and all that, this definitely is for you. Hi ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of Models and Mindset. Today, my guest is Kwabena Tufuor. Kwabena Tufuor is a strategist. He is an innovator and someone who is able to bring stakeholders together, gather resources to solve complexities of our days. His work draws an intersection between stakeholder engagement, technology, and ladies and gentlemen, guess what? Artificial intelligence. He's one of the best innovators of our days, for sure. Help me welcome Kwabena Tufuor. Kwabena, you're welcome.
Thank you, Ben. Right. And it's a pleasure being here.
The pleasure is all ours. So, Kwabena, it's been a while. We've had some discussions, for some time, but I think I told you that I can't really wait to have you on this podcast because not only myself, but I believe our audience can't also wait to hear what you have to say about this evolving space of artificial intelligence and then what's the innovations that you are bringing in. I think it's super fantastic. But before we jump into the detailed discussion, tell us, who is Kwabena beyond the company, the AI, the innovation, the entrepreneur?
Thanks once again for having me. Beyond Mirabilis and being an entrepreneur, Kwabena is that lifelong learner. I'm actually curious naturally, and like you've already mentioned, I think in systems. And that means that whilst I'm designing solutions, I'm not just looking at the product, but before the evolution of that product or the creation of that product, the resources, the people, the systems, the collaboration, the partnerships that make that product come out in a very robust manner, which helps solve human solutions. And right from childhood, I'd always been curious about how things work. What can make this thing tick the best? What can make this process become better? And that's what I've always been as a person.
Yeah, amazing. Kwabena, tell us about your school life a little bit. Where did you go to school? If you're comfortable with sharing, and maybe you have other colleagues out there who are really interested in seeing your academic journey, because it also interests us to know or be able to connect what you are doing now with your academic background.
Right. I'll even like to start from childhood. Right. I grew up in a household where my dad at the graduate level studied physics. And so at that young age, I would ask a lot of questions. I'll ask him what this was. I remember those days I'll say, can we build a crane? How do cranes work? How does this lift? And he would take his time to be able to explain them to me. And for me, I'm particularly grateful to him because he was the type that nurtured that kind of curiosity in me by getting me the books and having time to be able to answer all the questions that I did have. Now, beyond that, when you're a child, you bought a car, you see a radio, you try to break it down and try to understand what was this going on. And there wasn't any YouTube that could really provide a reference at that time.
Yeah.
I remember the first book that he bought for me, Man and Animals. It talked about the woodpecker, the buffalo, the lions, and that was my first real glimpse into how the world of animals and other things work. I can imagine those days when I so much was happy imagining all the animals there. He took me over to the zoo. But quite beyond that, I used to be that at a young age in school. If you were to go to my GSS, Santa Maria, a lot of people would describe me as a quiet, introspective person. I hardly talked in class. The real evolution happened in at the university, where I had been quiet for about the first 2 years. I hardly spoke in class, University of Kikos. I've been very quiet in class. Then I remember having a conversation with my uncle. He used to be a professor at the University of Ghana, retired now. And whilst he just said these things. Kwabena, you've got to break the jinx and chartering course. I remember those words so much that I went home, wrote that words on the wall. And that's how I decided I had to be more bold. I had to be more forward with my ideas and not keep myself in a shell. At the university also, I had a lot of conversations with my roommates. We explored topics around politics, around economics, around the things that basically went around us. But one thing, if you ask my roommates, some of them I remember, Boham will tell you is Kwabena was the guy who always said he's going to run his company. I told them. When I was in third year, I remember very well, I told them, look, I think I'm going to run my company. I remember when I came out of school as the national service, my pastor asked me, what are you going to do? I did not have an idea in mind. Maybe I had a couple of ideas, but I didn't yet wrote anything out. I said I wanted to build my own company.
Did you have, was there any subjects or experiences in school that made you carry this mindset?
So whilst in school, usually at UCC or in any educational institution, you find people going into the library and they'll be reading their lecture notes. That did not mean to say I did not study, but I quite kind of found myself drawn more to books on politics, business. So you see me at the corner where we have magazines like The Economist, Newsweek, Time Magazine. I remember very well when I finished GHS, the gift my dad bought for me was Time Magazine, Man on the Territory. So that curiosity still wanted me to find out how people built businesses, how politics interacted with business, with commerce, and how it affected the globe and even the country as a whole. So I came out with that kind of experience where I wanted to peer into the lives that lived right beyond the classroom. And that's what really shaped me.
Yeah, amazing. With that said, Kwabena, let's look at your transition into personal business,
Right.
and then artificial intelligence.
Yes.
When did this start?
Good. It actually came out of a practical problem. I did tell you that I had my graduate study at University of Utah. So it was at University of Utah where I found myself overwhelmed because I was running a business, Eco Protein Limited. I also had family, and then at the same time I needed to learn. And once you are exposed to the world of graduate study, you have lecture notes, you have articles, you have other, academic material to be able to read. And these are large volumes. That somewhat overwhelms your ability to be able to process all these things and still be able to stay on top of business and all of that. So I remember having a conversation with this friend of mine, Justice, and we were exploring what we could really do to shorten that curve and still be able to distill the information that. And we started exploring artificial intelligence. So you put in on the materials and you ask it to just summarize and give you all the highlights. But then also I saw other solutions elsewhere where hardware had been combined with AI and was being deployed. But I saw a gap. It was a bit too rigid and template driven.
Yeah.
And then I realized it lacked the kind of context. And over here, let me give an example. For instance, a student who is studying um, will want to have the insights from that particular material that they are trying to study when they are using AI. For, say, somebody who is a professional lawyer will want to be able to extract case arguments from copious documents and all of that that they had. A professional will be attending meetings, strategy sessions, and what have you, but they still need to be able to take decisions. And so for me, I realized that this problem did not apply to me alone. It was global in nature. A lot of people face that kind of problem. And for me, that was where I realized we could do something by deploying a tool that could shorten the curve between one, consuming information, distilling and synthesizing that, and then applying whatever that information came up.
Now, just before you delve into, if I would talk about the tools and all of that, what was your first reaction to AI when you actually began to appreciate its potential?
I was fascinated by it. And then I realized it held a lot of potential. And I examined that within the context of the myriad of problems that a lot of people faced. Not as students, but professionals, people working within their places who face similar problems. Because anybody working now is a family person. They are at work and probably they are going to school. And I saw within the lenses of AI to be that particular tool that could help individuals become more efficient and also close the gap, because we live in a generation where we are we access information that is greater and so overwhelming beyond any other generation that has lived beyond us. And the question that asks you then is, how do you get to process this information so much that you don't get this cognitive overload? Your mind is not overwhelmed, because once you're overwhelmed, it leads to confusion, information is fragmented, and then decision making, whether it is learning, whether it's in the office, becomes very, very difficult. And that was where I realized AI could really help us solve that situation.
That makes so much sense. For me, I think this is really inspiring because a lot of people are dealing with problems that obviously artificial intelligence can actually help solve. But I would go ahead and ask this. What gave you the courage to say that, you know what, I'm going to go ahead and then build this? You have identified the gap. Okay, let me just, in my own way, do something about it and use it for myself. But you were able to gather enough courage to say that I'm going to go in, make a business out of this.
One thing always is that entrepreneurship begins in stages and it shapes you. It builds the grit. It gives you the ability to dream beyond the realms of your own personal possibilities. I've already told you that thinking in systems, I knew everything could not be done by me.
Correct.
But then I could ally with other people, the resources, the people, whether there are engineers, then also you have financiers, then you also have other people. And what I needed to do was to bring these systems together so that we could just deploy. And these things did not come easy. I remember the point in time when we were trying to identify our manufacturing partner. And the night before I was going for the meeting, I was scared actually. What if this doesn't work? And then you've just been through cash and everything just goes through. But somehow, when you have failed before and you've been able to come out of that and yet been able to make something better out of it, you recall and then you realize you've had a similar experience. You are scared, but you still go ahead and then do it. And for me, I think my previous stints as an entrepreneur built that kind of boldness, and it shapes the approach by which you go to tackle. In previous stages where you fail, you pick these lessons along the line, and that is what becomes the tools in your arsenal with which you work to deploy that solution.
Right. It makes so much sense. And the reason why I asked that question is because artificial intelligence is not new, but in our context, it's still gaining grounds, right? And so, I mean, we are going to talk about its acceptance and the reception in various industries and all that. And so, for me, I'm really learning from what you're just saying, because then it's going to take a different level of courage to say that, you know what, this is a new tool. People are now buying into it. I'm still going to, develop a solution, right, with this, what we have right now, and see how it goes. It makes so much sense. Now, Kwabena, tell us what Mirabilis mean to you, why that name, why that name for the company? Is it because of some vision that you had or something like that? Why Mirabilis? And what does it mean to you?
Mirabilis actually came from two things that we stood for. And by we, I'm talking about the entire team because I did not do this alone. It started with one, optimism, and then ambition. Optimism because we knew what we're building was also entering into new frontiers that people were not so familiar with. But we're very optimistic that so long that that kind of problem that we're looking to tackle was global in nature, people had that problem just as I had. Then also ambition because we wanted to dare,
Right,
to dream,
right.
to do great things. And doing great things are difficult, but you soon go ahead to do it. Yes, Mirabilis,
Our family tell you to ask you to retake that statement again.
yes, yes. I mean, the whole thing is ambition is daring to dream even in the face of obstacles. It does not necessarily mean everything was a smooth sailing process. Of course, you have bugs, you hit snags, you have to come back and redesign the system as you go on. And especially when you're working within the realms of tech, you always have to iterate over the period. Not everything works from the get-go. And even when you're working with others and collaborating, there are sometimes that you begin to hit some hurdles, but yet that vision that you have that you are going to build a company, a system which will help able to solve a key problem that people have, help them gain clarity, be able to distill information no matter how overwhelming it is into bits where they can one consume and then use it to take actionable decisions, then it was best that we needed really to be watching with her. And that was it.
Makes so much sense. Kamala, so now on top of that, what company are you trying to build? Are you trying to build a tech company, an AI company, an education company, or say a human development company? Exactly what company is Mirabilis supposed to be?
At this point in time, I would say where we are trying to solve a productivity issue where we are deploying tools that enable people to become more productive and efficient at what we do. But that's not where it's going to stay. It's going to stay it's going to evolve into a place where we are going to be a human intelligence augmentation company. What do I mean by this? The thing is that AI in itself is necessarily not coming to replace human thinking. It's going to augment it. And this will mean that we'll not just focus our sights on building tools that only enhance productivity in the workplace, but also in terms of learning, in terms of building culture. Because most of the tools that are made, as far as AI is concerned, is built for the global north.
Correct.
Now, how do you situate and then build solutions that are relevant to our African context? And that is what we are looking to do and then move over to that place.
Fantastic. Ladies and gentlemen, so just by way of information, Kwabena is part of a company called Mirabilis. And the first time I heard of Mirabilis, I was pretty much excited and surprised at the same time, because for me at the time, it's the only Ghanaian-based company that I knew were building, or they are building, artificial intelligence-based devices. All right. And so I got super excited and I said, no, I have to meet these people, right? And trust me, it's amazing. We're going to talk about their products in a bit. So Kwabena, I know you have 4 products currently in the system.
Right.
You have the Mirabilis AI Recorder.
Yeah.
You have the Mirabilis Earbud.
Right.
We have the Storyteller.
Right.
And then the last one
The
is
Mirabilis companion.
the companion.
Right.
Right. So I want us to talk first about the AI Recorder and what is it about? What is the vision behind the AI Recorder specifically? Who is it for and all of that? What is the story behind the AI Recorder? Which problem is it trying to solve?
Right. So, I mean, this is it, the device. I actually brought my own copy in. The Mirabilis AI Recorder actually is a tool that allows its users, one, to be able to capture information. And then apart from that information, it's able to distill it and summarize in the way that enables them to be able to take decisions faster and also bring clarity to everything that we're saying. And why did we do something like this? I've already given you the background story of my graduate study and the fact that we are faced with enormous information. And it's so overwhelming that sometimes you have people who go from meetings to meetings. And yet, because there is no clarity, decision making is also quite fragmented. You have students who happen to go to lectures, and because of the entire overload of information that they need to process and perhaps consume and be able to take decisions, they find themselves quite overwhelmed. Then even in the realms of other profession like lawyers, I mean, for people whose key work revolves around conversation and communication that should arrive at clarity, this is the kind of tool for them.
Right.
It is able to simplify that kind of information and then elicit the kind of insight. Why is this so? People go to meetings, they go to lectures, and by the time they come back, they forget that information.
Everything.
And the fact of the matter is that you do not necessarily need to listen to a whole 2-hour lecture note meeting in order to identify one single insight. And that is where AI comes in.
Right.
It's able to go through that information and elicit all the critical insights that one needs to be able to carry out with whatever tasks that they need to be do. And this is really targeted at professionals. We are talking about lawyers, we are talking about lecturers, we are talking about corporate people, executives, and then also students. So for anybody whose work revolves around capturing communication or voice data and make actionable insight out of them, this is the best tool for them to be able to have.
Kwabena, this is really, really interesting. I mean, so this is how small the device is, right?
Yeah.
And what it means is that even as we're having this conversation, we could be recording conversation, which is like
Yes.
And you also mentioned that it doesn't end here, just after the recording and then you replay the recording and then you listen to it.
Right.
What additional functionality, what makes this a game changer? Because I could have a standard recorder.
Right.
We record this conversation and I listen to it.
Right.
But this is doing so much more.
Right.
Right? Reporting and other things. How does that take place? You already mentioned that is the function of that artificial intelligence, but exactly how does the AI coming in? What is in this?
So the real game changer is this. It's this ability to adapt itself into various contexts. I've already mentioned, and I mean, there are other tools over there. But in this day and age where time is of the essence, you want to compress the distance between one, capturing a particular data, especially when it's voice-based, and then extracting the insights to take a decision. Now, this allows the user to capture the data and then interpret it in their context. And that is how that's what changes it. So it's not merely going to recall, because we live in a knowledge economy where recall is no longer the advantage. The real advantage is how you process that information into real usable insight. And that is what we actually need in today's world. So it captures.
And I take it that it is not necessarily about you listening to it, but then you get to see the transcribed
Exactly. The transcribed recording. And after that, you're able to elicit the summary. So you're able to get the overview of it. You are then able to also get the action points, the risk associated with it. And this is aligned to suit the very context.
All automatically generated for you.
All automatically generated.
Is it on my laptop or my phone?
It comes onto your phone, and that allows you to also share whatever insights that you have or the output across multiple channels. Whether you're working with teams on WhatsApp, you are sharing it via email, you are sending it to a cloud platform somewhere so you can disseminate it elsewhere, you are then able to do. But one other thing also is the fact that you direct how it should get to work.
Right.
You put in prompts that is customized in your
Mm.
particular situation. So for a student who wants to be able to elicit all the key action points within a lecture, the key points within a lecture, and be able to even elicit exam appropriate areas, it is able to do that and then generate it. For that person who has written a book and probably in the bit to market, will want the system to be able to listen to monologues that are created so that it creates punchy social media campaign headlines. This is able to do that. For that lawyer that wants to carry out a client interview and based on that be able to come up with a case argument, this is able to do that. And for that person on the board who is listening to a board meeting or in a board meeting and wants to be able to extract all the meaningful intelligence from that and use that to make business decisions, this also becomes the most appropriate tool.
Yeah, I think this is super amazing. I mean, I have seen it at work, and trust me, it's totally blew my mind, right? And so I think every serious company at least should get one of these. That's right. If you guys have periodic Monday morning meetings and there is that secretary or PR who is supposed to be compiling reports and all like that, this definitely is for you.
Yes.
Kwabena, let's jump to the AI companion.
Right. The companion actually is designed for young people within the ages of 10 to 17.
Right.
And we designed that because that's mainly the age where people are progressing in their curiosity, the ability to think critically and question the world around them. Now, we find ourselves in a milieu where people get to study, and beyond the classroom, the time and by design, the curriculum doesn't even allow them to critically examine stuff. And I have an experience like that. I remember those days where, studies are based on recall, what is, underline, fill in the blank and all of that. You do not allow the person to critically examine and even challenge some of the assumptions of the concepts that you are taught in school. And that is what a tool enables one to be able to do that. Beyond the classroom, it further deepens one's insight about the foundational concepts that they are learning in school. They are also able to learn about the world beyond them. Because in today's world of work and in today's AI-driven world, your advantage is not only merely about recall. I have already mentioned it's about your ability to process information, critically think about concepts, and also provide actionable and viable solutions. Now, this helps the young learners to be able to ask questions. It could be foundational knowledge in their various spaces of study, whether it's culture, whether it's lifestyle, whether it's math and all of that. And beyond that, be able to connect that to the real world that is around them. And that is what bridges the gap. And the main intention behind that was also because we find ourselves in a place where unless somebody is in an elite school or the person finds themselves in the Western world, they cannot behave and synthesize information like they're able to. And these two are bridges that as soon as they're able to talk, they're able to get that feedback. It sort of widens their horizons of thinking and expands the frontier of what they are really.
Exactly. Now, this is very, very important because a number of things come to mind. Talking about, because I just wanted to follow up with why that age of 10 to 17, but you rightly said that is actually where the brain is developing and you are very curious and you want to question a lot of things. And so having that companion is super important. How do you build this companion, this artificial intelligence companion, without turning it into a shortcut machine for homework?
Right. So at the end of the day, I did say artificial intelligence should not replace human thinking.
Correct.
It only needs to augment it
Right.
and make us better at the things that we want to do. So this is not designed as a tool that enables a person to answer the assignment. Let's go back to the conversation where I did say, when I was young, my dad was around and I was able to ask him a lot of questions. Now the world of work has made a lot of parents a bit absent. You and I both know sometimes you travel, you're out, you're hired at work, and children do not have that same experience that some people may have, or the privilege to belong to some institutions that nurture such things. Now, this, in as much as it helps the person to do an assignment, actually deepens the person's understanding of concepts. So we are not saying we are bringing a tool that allow the student to sort of close the gap. We are not short-circuiting education. What we are actually doing is that we are allowing children beyond the classroom to be able to have that world experience where they have a companion that allows them to think deeply, to understand the world better, and expand the frontiers of their knowledge.
This brings to mind a story that one of my professors shared with me, and this is with regards to his son,
All right.
who is in a Montessori,
Right.
and he was telling me that, says Ben, there's this one time when a kid came home after the term break, brought his papers, exams papers. I had a look at it, and then you should see the questions. Samson, where was his strength? And he got a bit upset. And so he had to just drive his car to the headmistress and then started questioning the headmistress, saying, okay, in this modern age and time, yes, these things may be important, but honestly, he brought his kid to Montessori because he thought the things that they teach the children could be a little bit different. And for me, listening to what you're telling me, the AI companion is even a much better extension.
Right.
Because if this is what schools are teaching kids, I'm not saying it's a bad thing. Of
Right.
course, that part is there, but then it's also, this companion more or less helps, like you're saying, bridge that gap, expose them to the other parts of the world that actually that is now becoming even the greater part of the world now, because now everything is digital. I mean, we are talking about tech here, right? So it makes so much sense to me. But then let's also look at people's perception about the artificial intelligence risk, most especially with regards to the AI companion, the Mirabilis AI companion.
Right.
Do you think parents are going to be a little bit alarmed? Okay, I'm exposing my child to artificial intelligence so soon and all of that. Do you, and how would you address risk?
Have to be responsible regarding the deployment of these tools and should I say gadgets that come up. One, we have been able to build guardrails that does not allow the system to go rogue.
Okay.
So there are certain questions that if you query, by the way, it runs on DeepSeek, that it will decline.
Yeah, that is the ones, the Chinese artificial intelligence.
Chinese artificial intelligence. And the other thing also is that beyond that, parents also have control over the usage.
Right.
I mean, I told you we are within this iteration process where we release the version, allow users to test and learn, give the feedback, and we are building this around the customer, around the parents, taking into consideration all the concerns that they may have, and even allaying the fears that they do have. Because I recall I was having a conversation with this parent. It was like, this thing that you are, how then is my son not going to be sitting there learning about how to build this and then be learning other, should I say, sexually immoral stuff and all of that. And that is why we built these guardrails. to make sure that it does not stray beyond. So the primary essence of Mirabilis AI Companion is one, building the foundational knowledge, broadening their worldview, closing the gap between one, the learning experience that people elsewhere, even in some elite schools, might have, and that child who doesn't have access to the systems that enable a holistic educational experience to take place. And that is what we are really.
And if you think about it, then from another angle,
Right.
the child is also learning how to even prompt artificial intelligence.
Exactly.
Because I take it that a 14-year-old boy or a 15-year-old boy should be able to ask the companion, can you tell me the gases that make up the sun? Can you tell me how the solar system?
Right.
Things like that, right?
Right.
Exactly. Right. And so in indirectly, the child is also learning how to prompt. Because eventually, everyone would have to know how to prompt.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's context, asking questions within context. And he also built one thing, systems thinking. Because one thing is,
Fantastic.
once a child is curious, and they begin to ask questions, they begin to ask other follow-up questions.
True.
And try to connect how one concept connects to other concepts.
Yes.
Or other disciplines, and even how that impacts the world around them. Teachers in the classroom do not have that luxury of time and bandwidth to be able to answer the unique questions and concerns that all these children have. Parents may not necessarily have the resource or even the intellectual wherewithal to be able to answer these things. And that is where Mirabilis Companion.
This is amazing. We've spoken about two products. We've spoken about the recorder. We've spoken about the AI companion. Let's talk about the Mirabilis Storyteller.
Yes.
What is it? And what story is it telling?
Right. So Mirabilis Storyteller actually was built out of the fact that children at that age also
Even
go
a specific age.
between the ages of 5 and then
Okay. So the AI companion is for 10 to 17, and the storyteller is
5 to 9.
5 to 9 years.
And at that age, a lot of children grasp their learning through narratives. If I were to ask you one peculiar thing that you remember about some concepts, you're most likely to remember the ones that came through a story.
Right.
Not necessarily the one that said this, it is this definition.
True.
And children learn especially through narratives. So by telling stories around culture, around concepts, foundational concepts, around lifestyle, how they should behave, etiquette, and even the basic things that they learn, the storyteller is able to frame this in narratives which stick better. At the same time, you are improving upon the cognition of the child, because within that age, 5 to 9, there's a lot of cognitive growth that takes place. Now, imagine the child finds him or herself. And once again, I want to highlight the importance of bridging any disadvantage that a child, no matter their background, will be able to bridge by using the AI storyteller. What it is for a child in this space, they may not necessarily be going to the best of schools. They may not necessarily have their parents around to ask the questions. And these days, we live in an era where families are becoming increasingly nuclear. Language development even depends on interaction. Now, how do you ensure that the same advantages that a child in the global north, a child in a relatively upscale environment, upper middle class, is able to unlock the same opportunities as his counterpart in a much more privileged position?
Right.
By shaping the learning experience through narratives. It allows children to ask the questions. They can even push back. Why? And at that age, it's not just about what. You're teaching the child how to ask why. Why is it? Because it's through the whys that we are able to unlock other hidden information that we would.
I agree with you. No, Kwabena, this is really, really getting interesting. I agree with what you're saying 100%. And I feel sometimes because of the our upbringing, not from the home, but I mean, well, generally the culture, we don't even ask why.
Yes.
If someone stands in front of me and tells me this and this is what it is, I'm not going to ask the person why, because asking why feels like, okay, I want to know too much, or I'm probing too much. And so maybe we say you are not respectful in some context, and all of that. And for me, that makes sense. It teaches children not to be timid. True. But be able to know the reasons behind things, right? But tell me, in practical sense, what kinds of stories will the storyteller be able to tell children, especially with in that age?
Understand. Yes. So it uses anecdotes, stories that you could ask Mirabilis to tell you stories about Anansi, and then the kind of wisdom,
Right.
or the kind of insight that says stories draw.
Right.
And the fact of the matter is that in our part of the world, we are losing touch with all the folk stories and other things that we are. It also shapes narratives around even behavior. A child goes to school, he was rude, he comes back, and he wants to talk. Children are quite expressive.
Yeah.
Hello, storyteller, or sometimes you say, hey,
Yeah.
so this is what happened in school today. I got into a fight, perhaps, or maybe I acted rude, or I did not do so well in my class, or I somewhat strayed into another area that I wasn't able to go to, and this is what happened. And now I don't even feel good about it. Now the system now captures this information and uses that as an opportunity to teach the child, oh, that was quite unfortunate.
Yeah.
However, next time you should be able to do X, Y, Z. The child comes back and say, hey, today we learned something around the weather.
Yeah.
Now, how does the weather impact our environment? And the AI, the storyteller, Mirabilis, is able to tell the child, breaking down in the language and in the context within which you understand. And this is a far departure away from how our education system is somewhat designed generally. Because it's designed mainly on record, understanding, just taking it without questioning, like you did mention.
Yeah.
Now, over here, the child gets to understand how weather impacts crops, connects even it to climate and climate change, global warming. And these are things we may seem a bit esoteric outside of the classroom. But over here, with a child querying and asking, they are exposed to some of these concepts.
Right.
And the reason why we need is Ghana and Africa as a whole need children and people who are not just able to recall. Look, we have systems that can really recall at a speed.
Exactly.
We need people who take a problem-solving approach to things. And the only way you can do that is by allowing children to ask questions, presenting real-world problems to them, and giving this explanation and align or connecting it to the real-world challenges that happen around us. And that's the advantage that the Mirabilis AI Storyteller brings.
Fantastic. Now, Kwabena, I just want you to connect. I'm going to connect you to the AI storyteller. Children ask really deep questions, and that at this age, they ask really deep questions in the simplest of ways.
Right.
So, in working out this product, how has it really changed your view about intelligence?
I've come to realize that AI has evolved a lot.
Yeah.
And in terms of artificial intelligence, now we are now able to process large language models, and there is also pattern recognition.
Yeah.
Now, what it means is that by breaking down the questions and all of that, children, and even in a broader aspect, young adults get to asking, it is able to break down concepts into a means or into models that are understandable at that age. The other thing also is that intelligence happens as the experience and exposure of a child increases. And you are intelligent, even though we have people with talents and all of that, access to tools, access to environments that stimulate their innate abilities are wildly limited. Now, when you have tools like the Mirabilis AI Recorder, companion, or Storyteller come through, it is able to unleash that latent energy that happens within it. I always say this, humans are like, and I want to cite the first law of thermodynamics that says energy can be, it's not created or destroyed, but can be transformed from one. And that curiosity is a form of energy. It's like a dumb area. Now, how do you make sure that you are channeling that child's latent energy into productive areas, leveraging that curiosity to be able to learn? That is when you bring tools like these to nurture them, to quicken them. But I say this also with a caveat. It does not mean the child will need to interact with AI all the time. There has to be some caps placed on it. And that is why we allow parents to be able to say, okay, you're controlling access to say an hour a day, 2 hours a day, so they can also learn to function and interact with other humans within their environment.
Yeah. As a matter of fact, that was actually going to be my final question with regards to the storyteller. What is the parental control on that, given the young age? So it's very good that you have that figured out. Kwabena, let's jump now to the Mirabilis AI Earbud. Tell us, what is it about? What was the idea behind it? What problem is it trying to solve?
So the underlying problem that we're trying to solve was about connection and communication. And the fundamental means by which humans communicate is through language. Now we are in a global space where even if you're in Africa, you're communicating with somebody outside, either physically or virtually. Now, if you cannot speak French, German, Russian, Chinese, then you are limited in the way you're able to connect and communicate with that individual. Now, what the AI Earbud does is that it does live translation from your native language, be it English or French, into the language of the person that is speaking. It has about 116 languages in there. So, for instance, I am from Ghana, I find myself in Germany, and I need to be able to communicate. I quickly switch and then I say let the outputs be in German. So as I speak, it's like this headphones, or not hip the earpods, and then the person takes one. I speak, and then it translates to the person live. And we also wanted to make this thing very accessible to the person, everybody by way of price. Your standard translator will cost you between $100 and $120. We decided to cut that price by more than 60%. So instead of going to get a translator where you speak and then it has to translate, you have this that functions also of a speaker for you to listen to music, and at the same time you are able to tune it to the other language that the person goes, so that the ease of communication is established. But beyond that also, we also realize that there are some people who might be OCD. So they wouldn't even want to have your earbuds in their ear. So the interface also, there is an interface on the phone whereby whatever that is spoken is transcribed into words, both in English and in the target language. So if the person doesn't want the to use the earpods, you're still able to read, and communication is able to take place.
This is a game changer. So basically, I can acquire one, travel to any country. I mean, I can easily interact with people, and it's just a good connection. And do we have a lot of African languages in there?
We are now about to go there, and that comes down to some of the challenges that we have, where we need to be able to digitalize a lot of these models, the languages, train the AI to be able to pick up. But this is the starting point. We are focusing on the global language because we are looking at mainly people, business people, professionals who travel elsewhere, students who are in other countries to go and study to enable communication. And this will transition to a space when we are now incorporating local languages, indigenous languages on the African continent.
Kwabena, we've spoken about 4 fantastic products that you have on the market, and I believe there's a website. After the discussion, we'll definitely share the website or
Right.
any way that people can reach out to you.
Right.
But let's talk about, when the topic of AI comes up, definitely we need to talk about ethics. Most likely human judgment as well. And you've indicated a number of times that artificial intelligence and therefore your product, do not seek to kind of replace exactly human judgment and all of that, but then to support people. Why is this important to you?
This is very important because at the end of the day, the human has to be the one to take the decision, not a machine.
Yeah.
So, in the face of overwhelming information that is synthesized, aggregated, and presented in a format that gives clarity to the person who is taking the decision, the final decision making still has to lie with a human being. And that is where ethics are very important. Otherwise, we may get to a time, and I'm sure you've come across articles where there have been doomsday predictions about AI going rogue, taking over machines, and all of that.
Yeah.
And that is why designers of AI systems will also need to incorporate that kind of responsibility there. There have to be guardrails set of was, because at the end of the day, in as much as AI becomes much more competent at recall and aggregating this kind of information, there is one power that lies with a human.
Yeah.
The power to be able to implement. And that is what has to be ultimate. It has to be a human being.
Right. I mean, honestly, I was actually going to ask you what really worries you about the direction that AI products and AI companies are taking globally.
Right.
Because I don't know if you heard, and yeah, I'll share 2 stories actually.
Right.
One is what happened in the US,
The
Anthropic, and then current time OpenAI, exactly, and the Pentagon issue and all of that. And I believe when we were going to Addis, I came to you and I told you that there's a particular movie that you should check that. I've forgotten the title. From exactly, and how some of the AI went rogue, and that was even through human action and all of that. So yeah, I was actually about to ask whether you have any worry concerning, the direction that AI products are generally taking shape globally.
And really, there's sometimes I sit down with my co-founder and we really, pour through some of the predictions. I don't know whether you read this book. I read that when I was, I think, at the GHS or HG Wells.
Oh no.
War of the Worlds. It's actually been adapted into a movie. I think the movie was by Tom Cruise, where they built certain machines. No, these machines came from Mars or from another planet, and they started causing a lot of havoc on Earth and all of that. And for me, if you ask me, deep down, I have that fear. We will get to a place where AI will begin to become intelligent enough to say, look, these humans will become much more intelligent.
Yeah.
Why don't you take over? I'm sure you've read about this article. At a point in time, they built an AI for some computers. And at a point in time, they started communicating in languages that, and all of a sudden, they had to connect. And these are some of the dangers around AI.
Yeah.
And especially when it is weaponized with the destruction of human, right? So without mentioning any company, you heard about how AI is now being weaponized and is being used in the theater of war. And at the end of the day, it somewhat shapes the perception that people have about AI. Thinking, look, these are tools for distraction. It's designed to make people passive. It's designed to make us lazy. I've known people who are like, oh, these things that you are rolling out is going to make us easy. I say, point of correction, it's actually supposed to augment your abilities. It's not supposed to simply override your sense of thinking of your cognitive abilities. And it's also how you're able to use it. And one thing I found also about AI is this. It's garbage in, garbage out, honestly. True. If you are prompting the system, you do not give it the proper context, the proper parameters under which it should think, it might give you information that is even hallucinatory in nature.
Yeah.
Tell you a situation. There was a time where last year in South Africa, there was news of a law firm that I think they relied on AI to extract their case argument.
Yes.
Without necessarily putting in the anti-hallucinatory causes. And this wasn't because AI was dangerous, it's because the people lacked the critical skills needed to elicit the right information that they needed. So unfortunately, they went to argue their case in court, and it came out that all the cases they cited were fictitious cases. So they lost the case, and the client was suing the law firm for $100,000. So over here, it's about responsibility in design and then responsibility also in use.
Yeah.
And that is why these guardrails will always have to be set.
Yeah.
And this also needs to be spearheaded by nation states, policy around it. So there has to be policies that should guard the ethical deployment, usage of AI, and that's where we need to.
Yeah. And for me, I think that there should even be policies,
Right.
Really detailed policies, country level policies to kind of guide the way AI is being used, especially, I mean, both for private and then the government, sectors. Kwabena, let's talk about an interesting area as well, and I'm talking AI in Africa and Ghana.
Yeah.
Obviously, you've been traveling a lot. You've been discussing your products and all of those things. When you look at artificial intelligence in Africa today, what really excites you about?
For me, I'm excited about the way it is helping bridge the gap between knowledge acquisition, or should I say data acquisition, and then the synthesization of this knowledge in a way that aids clarity. In essence, it's augmenting productivity regarding the way it is being used.
Yeah.
For instance, if a founder were to think of rolling out a particular solution for which they had certain gaps in the domain areas within which it operated, it meant I had to say, if I needed a data scientist, I needed to speak to a data scientist.
Correct.
I needed to go and then speak to maybe a statistician somewhere. The time frame within the actual conceptualization and deployment of this situation, of this solution, will be so wide that by the time it's even ready, I may have run out of funds, have the timing will be wrong, and I would be go. But with the aid of AI, I could then begin to query, ask a lot of questions around that, and it begins to frame and even strengthen the idea around what I really want to be able to build. And that is what I'm beginning to see, that if the adoption of it, when used right, will be able to help us leapfrog the developmental gaps that we have. I'm also excited about the fact that there are quite some solutions. For instance, Kaya AI, that is actually building a system that allows children to be able to learn in local languages.
Fantastic.
That is coming in here.
Right.
And that is where we need to Africanize AI. Make sure it is relevant to our systems. Like I did say, a lot of these tools are built for the global north. And tech founders, entrepreneurs, people within the ecosystem should not merely copy what is out there, but should rather re-engineer it in a way that solves real problems that are relevant to our continent. That's what I'm excited about.
In that respect, do you think that Africa is currently building enough original AI products, or we are just mostly consuming what others have built?
At this point, we are consuming what has been built. and I think the AI space is quite nascent. However, what gives me hope is what younger generations like you and I, and even people much more younger than us are going up, because so long as people get to continue to get exposed to AI, the realities and its power and how it can transform lives, the more we begin to build solutions that are relevant to our situation and not merely become consumer. But for this also to be able to work, what it means then is that we need to design, and by we, I'm talking about governments, authorities need to design environments that allow such solutions to be able to flourish.
So yeah.
What really made these solutions out there in the West, and should I say the other countries be able to, was that policymakers and governments designed solution and made the environment conducive for such innovations to be deployed. I'm talking about capital, access to data, access to resources, enriching the educational experience so much that it is problem solving oriented and not merely based on recall. Yeah. And that is where I think that, and I strongly suggest that the planners of our educational curriculum and systems will need to think about, because if you are nurturing minds for the next century or for this AI age, let me put it in that way, we do not need people who should merely recall. Recall doesn't do anything. The advantages that recall brought, that age has already passed. We are now in an age where we need to be able to solve problems, whether in the area of healthcare, in the area of food security, in the area of education, in the area of productivity, what have you.
Yeah.
And the fundamental problem is nurturing the right minds, building the right ecosystems, and making it enabling in such a way that whether it's access to capital, access to tools and resources, people are able to deploy solutions that are African in nature and are relevant to our context.
Fantastic. Kwabena, now I have so much to ask you right now. Let's look at this. What do you think it would take for Africa to, kind of move from AI adoption to AI leadership, where globally, and when I say AI leadership, I'm talking the fact that we have African-based AI models trained with African data, understands African culture, right? Context, everything is purely African. Where at what point in time do you think that we are fit enough to say that, yeah, this is African, and then what do you think is going to take us to get there?
Wherever I go, whether in Ghana or other parts of Africa, I see a lot of talent, great talent. As a matter of fact, the engineers that we work with at Mirabilis are incredible people. What I see the gaps are, like I said, is poor access to the right education, poor access to capital, and the enabling environment, for instance, tax regimes, building a kind of funding ecosystem that says, hey, we are going to nurture these brilliant minds to be able to go. But the first step has to be with re-engineering our education system, starting from where children do not just regurgitate what they are taught, but are able to question concepts. They are able to critically think about things. They are problem solving oriented, so much that by the time they are of age or by the time they are growing through, they think of the concepts and all the knowledge that they are shaped with in systems. And they are also able to align these concepts to the right resources and solutions. If these solutions are missing, we'll need to retrain our teachers. We'll need to design our classrooms in a way that enable knowledge capture, and not just knowledge capture, children to be able to really connect whatever they learn in the classroom to real world problems. I'm sure you've heard people, founders, managers of business and others say, hey, the new crop of graduates that we are having now are like square pegs in the round holes. And it's not their problem. It's because right from school, they are not exposed to situations that allow them to harness their problem-solving skills.
As a matter of fact, yeah, we are going to talk about that briefly. And I actually even can't wait to get there. But come on, let's bring this home.
Right.
Okay. How do you assess where we are now as Ghana in the AI space? How will you assess it?
We are still at the nascent stage.
Mm.
Adoption is still low. And if you should ask anybody who has the only AI they might know might be just be a few. And even when it comes to even how to prompt it to be able to operate, they lack the right new skills and the right way to be able to do that.
Yeah.
What we need is a deeper understanding of how AI is. That's the first thing. Then beyond that, how do we connect that to the problems that exist within our context? And how do we design solutions around them? That is where we need to be. Because AI has so much enormous advantages. Let me give you a bit of case in point.
Sure.
Recently, I was just around and I was just thinking around, okay, our stock market before now is digitized. You have the license, doing the, and those days they will go and write, so people will buy stocks and so on, put it under their beds, right?
Yeah.
And I was like, if people understood that you could even prime your AI to be able to say, okay, look at these stocks, give me the year-to-date performance, have all these data, so much that on these financial houses that sell these products, whether it's stocks or whatever, they can give real insights to the user. And it's somebody who has zero knowledge within how the financial world works. He will say, okay, based on this data that by this company, we think this is a very good stock to buy. That could even help improve upon financial literacy. This is just an angle that I've mentioned.
And it may not necessarily be a financial advice, but a guide.
The guide that goes along. Let's even talk about even farmers, right?
Yeah.
Farmers, without having access to extension officers, are unable to plan the right time to plant their crops. And right now, in the space of climate change, we have our planting seasons wholly disrupted. Imagine if we're able to build systems that understand our weather patterns, be able to give real life updates to the farmers so that they are able to plant their crops at the right time. They're able to detect diseases and all of that at the right time and be able to take real quick decisions that enable them reduce crop loss and even harvest loss. And over here, I'm even tackling the thing on food security. So there are so many things, and there is a lot of minute to cover as far as AI, the knowledge about AI, the deployment of the system, and the right way to use it is concerned. And that's what we need to be able to,
Kwabena, this is interesting. I'm going to ask you this. Mirabilis, you are already doing it, but on a national scale, look at the youth of today, probably their enthusiasm, the knowledge, and everything. Do you think that we have the talent to continue building, world-class artificial intelligence products to support the country?
When the right, I say this with career, when the right systems are put in place, we will be able to build the right tools. I've already said there is incredible talent, but where there is raw talent that exists in the absence of resources that nurture the talent and grow it into a place where it really becomes a means for them to deploy solutions that solve real problems that plague our country, where there is a lack of patient capital to be able to support nascent businesses that are coming up, so much that their business model is sustained and it becomes scalable even across the borders of the country. You will always have these, talent stunted. So why do we realize that somebody is over here in Ghana, they might not really be getting along, all right? But the moment they find themselves elsewhere in the West, all of a sudden they begin to blow up.
Things are changed.
It's about the systems.
Right.
It's about the environment. And that is where we need to engineer it to make sure that it aligns the unique needs, taps into the latent talents of our young people, and then enable them to deploy the solution for our need. Because if you're sitting down thinking that somebody from outside is going to deploy the solution, they deploy that to suit what the use case is in their environment. And by the time you realize that you're always lagging behind.
And you may even be paying a cost that you
A
wouldn't
cost that you wouldn't even know.
you know.
You may even be paying a cost that you wouldn't even know. And the fact of the matter is, you are actually giving the person enough data for them to be able to continue to dominate that particular space.
Exactly the
Why don't you make use of the data that's over here?
exactly the point. I know our communications minister has been talking about AI a lot, and sometimes I really question our readiness, which is exactly what I've asked you, because if you go to a lot of national institutions,
Right.
and I've had a number of people on the podcast and we've spoken about this. The fact that you go to a lot of national institutions and even laptops to work with is a problem in the offices.
Right.
You can go to a whole national institution. I'm not going to mention names, but you go there and there's not even a single laptop to work with. And yet we are talking about artificial intelligence, and then I keep asking myself, and that I believe forms part of the foundation,
Right.
the framework.
Right. The
Right?
framework.
The person doesn't even have a laptop to use Excel or Word on a day-to-day operation and activity. Right? How can that person?
Yes. The concept around even AI is limited, it's non-existent, because they what the mind cannot, you cannot conceive it.
Conceive it. So my question is, okay, you are talking about this, but I feel like the basic problem that we need to solve, we have not even solved it yet. But then, we are talking about this. And so at what point in time are we going to solve that problem? And at what point in time are we going to make our civil servants, public workers, and all of that AI ready,
Right.
what is to come? But that obviously can be a discussion for another day.
Time.
But what I'm about to ask you is very, very important, because most of my listeners are students, right? And I care about them a lot, because at the end of the day, I want people, especially students, to find their place in the world of tech, irrespective of whatever you are reading in school. So my question is this, how do you think Ghanaian schools or universities can better prepare students for the AI participation in the global AI revolution that is happening? And not just awareness, but how can they get them ready for the AI world?
I, I think even before our conversation, we were having this background discussion where we did say that within even the higher institutions, there is this kind of skepticism about the usage of AI. First, that skepticism has to be taken away. Two, the entire learning experience needs to incorporate AI. And then students will even have to be taught how to use AI responsibly. Not only that, they need to become familiar with them.
Right.
Now, it first of all starts with the tools that need to enable AI function effectively.
Yeah.
One, laptops, good internet connectivity. Then also you are talking about not necessarily prompt engineering, but context engineering. That is very, very important. You do not just get the output by necessarily giving it certain prompts.
Right.
You need to give it parameters
Right.
within which to reason. And that is what deepens the insights that it comes through. People will need to become familiar with these things, and then that already will begin to shape them. But first of all, we need to shed off that kind of skepticism that we have about AI. That is where it first has to be. Then institutions, and I'm starting from educational institution because these are the preparation grounds where students, or should I say, the workforce are actually, mentored, trained, and then deployed. Now, if the institution itself doesn't have the infrastructure that enable AI to function and doesn't even begin to think about coming up with their own homegrown solutions that is AI oriented, then we might lose that whole fight, because that will mean then that once these people get, whether in the world of work or they get to establish their own businesses, the learning curve between becoming familiar and then honing that skills is so much lengthened. And in this day and time, if you decide not to do things until it's necessary, time will punish you.
Right. That makes sense, right? And it's very, very interesting, and I hope they listen,
Yeah.
right? Kwabena, what do you think the role of the government should be in basically enabling responsible AI innovation?
Governments and parastatals actually design and come out with laws, policies, and um, you know, statutes by which guide these things. If these are non-existent, then what happens is that you leave the gate open for a lot of people to enter, and then you have rogue elements creating all sort of stuff. And that is why right from the onset, even before you're encouraging AI and all of that, you develop and deploy the policies around that. One, to be able to prime the country, prepare, and to take care of any contingencies which may arise. You also prevent situations coming up which may somewhat increase the skepticism that already exists amongst people. So it's the responsibility of government, first of all, to come up with the guidelines, the policies that should guide its innovation. And beyond that, also create that environment that allow ease in the deployment of these solutions. It could be one, giving founders within the tech space special allocations, setting up a special venture fund. Because for all these countries who have taken the lead in AI, it was taken up by the government.
Exactly.
Government allocated a lot of funds. They allowed them to fail, they allowed them to test, and now they perfected the whole thing. So yes, we live in an era where we say private enterprise should get to operate, but it also has to intersect with government's willingness and government's intentional policy to nurture and cause and growth within the space.
Guys, I am enjoying this conversation. If you're enjoying this conversation, make sure you hit the subscribe button, like, share, comment. Feel free to leave questions for Kwabena, and I'm pretty sure he'll respond to you. Kwabena, let's talk to our audience for a minute. What would you say to the young Ghanaian who hears about artificial intelligence every day? That boy, that girl doesn't really know where they fit in. What would you tell such a person?
This is what I would tell anybody, regardless of their age. Whatever, regardless of how you think, AI has come to stay. And the better you get familiar with it, the best. Now, finding the right fit is trying to find where your innate talents are. That's the first place. Now, once you find where your innate talents are, then you first of all find where they intersect with AI. And it begins first with having a problem-solving oriented mindset. Asking the whys. Why is this so? Why does that work? So develop the attitude of a young child who is just in the world and is trying to interact with it and wants to find out how some systems and elements are so. Once you develop that childlike curiosity, It allows you to go ahead and then learn and then research and be able to establish where there is a proper fit in at that time. I wouldn't be able to suggest and say this is where you would be able to, because it has to be within your own individual context. And you need to be able to understand where you fit. And before you understand, the first thing is you need to begin to ask the questions. You need to be curious. You need to be able to understand how it works. There are sometimes your environment may not necessarily be able to, but you have a tool, you may have a smartphone. Tell you what, I'm just going to tell you this. And when I was in university, I didn't have a laptop of my own. When my friends go out, I'll take the laptop and I'll start examining how this works, how that works. And I didn't know, but I was building the blocks. I've actually met a software engineer who said his first interaction with a computer was when he was in SHS. But guess what? That person is a software engineer who was in Silicon Valley.
Wow.
The thing is this, it first starts with your curiosity, your own internal drive. And you can't teach people to have drive. It has to be something innate from them. You need to have that willingness to say, I need to be part of this system. I refuse to allow this pass me by. I refuse to become that laggard. And I want to be able to go through it. And I remember what a teacher at SHS said, where there is a will, there is a way.
Fantastic. Kwabena, I think now I am even inspired because, well, for someone who's not new to AI, and sometimes I can't even comprehend how crazy it's getting right now and a lot of things that you can do with artificial intelligence. For me, I think it's fascinating, and I will just stand on what Kwabena just said and tell you that indeed the world of artificial intelligence, it's now where we are getting into. It's more or less I don't know if I should put it as the zenith of tech, or probably the beginning of tech, but wherever you put it, just find your place in there. If you're a student, learn how to use it, learn how to write prompts, learn how to solve problems with artificial. And for me, I think that is key. Learning how to solve problems with artificial intelligence. It should be able to guide your thinking. It's not supposed to do your assignment for you, but then it can basically help you, give you some useful information, and then you can write things in your own words, to exhibit understanding. All right. And like again, Kwabena said, it's not now, we're not now in the world of recall, but in the world of total understanding. And how does this work? Artificial intelligence takes a very complex topic and is able to, you can simply prompt it to tell you that, okay, you are doing something, computer engineering. Okay, can you break this thing down to me as like a 5-year-old child? And it's definitely going to come up with a scenario where you are going to have a very good understanding of that particular topic. In that case, you can just go ahead and then do your assignments, right? And so when you are able to build on that, you take it to the industry. Trust me, people think you'll be doing magic, but then of course it's just artificial intelligence being able to recollect, breaking things down for you, helping your understanding, and then you were just
And just to chip in here, but another thing also is there are a lot of free courses available. Universities, Coursera, you go over, there is Allison Learning. They provide free courses in some of these things, right? And with your smartphone, you can either go on YouTube and be able to watch documentaries around these things. Now, the pipeline for knowledge is not only restricted to educational institutions. Knowledge has become so democratic in a way that now you go onto platforms, you go to YouTube, you go over even on TikTok, we have content creators who are educating on all these things. And that is where young people will need to leverage on these platforms to be able to deepen their understanding of AI. And not just AI, but in any foundational topic that they have an interest in.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And if you are a professional, you should just understand that you can do your work very well, right? AI can even help you skyrocket, right?
Exactly.
If you are, in quotes, an influencer, as a matter of fact, you can just use Gemini New to create, a scenario for you. It can actually animate your own picture for you. and then get you to do things, whatever. There is a space for you in there. Just take a time and then make sure you go through. It's been a wonderful discussion here at Models and Mindset. Kwabena, my last question. This podcast is actually called Models and Mindset, and so I always end with this. In your own experience, in your own words, what does Models and Mindset mean to you?
In the context, I begin to understand mindset as one of the fundamental things that get to shape a country, that get to shape a people. And mindset is very important because with a wrong mindset, even the right environment will be wrong to someone. And models also provide that kind of structure through which things evolve. And I would like to connect this to young people. In everything that you do, you need to develop the right discipline and mindset that goes across. And sometimes you may not necessarily be privileged to find yourself in um, a rich home, an enabling environment that might sort of stimulate your ability to stay ahead of the curve. However, with the right mindset, where you say, this is where I am, this is where I come from, my situation is deplorable, it might be anything, but I'm not going to allow that to restrict my ability to realize the best version of myself. That is the right mindset to be able to develop, because we live in ages where we have information that is available. We have it in abundance. And this actually gives any person, rich or poor, that leverage to be able to even enter rooms that originally were designed to keep them out. Keep the right positive mindset. Never allow your environment to dictate to you and tell you cannot do it. Always have that optimism that with the right level of diligence, discipline, attitude, hard work, and luck, there is something that fits desires. It brings you in contact with people who can also help you with resources and partners, and you'll definitely be able to reach the zenith of your potential.
Fantastic, amazing. Guys, this is Models and Mindsets. We've had Kwabena Tufor on the show from Mirabilis. He's spoken about fantastic AI innovation happening right here in the country. Go ahead, check them out. Kwabena,
www.mirabilistech.ai.
here we have it, www.mirabilistech.ai. Will be shown on the screen right here. Go ahead and then check them out. And also you can check Kwabena out on LinkedIn. Just search for Kwabena 24, and then you should be able to get him. Leave a comment. Guys, make sure you subscribe. It's definitely not going to cost you a dime to subscribe. Send it to a friend. Let that friend send it to another friend. And then let's grow the channel. We are here to make sure that your tech journey is smooth. We are sharing inspiring stories so that, out of the traditional, you also are building your life, because you should always have the future in mind. This is Models and Mindset again. Catch you in another episode. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Yeah.